dear friends, you're in the Military with Summary channel. In this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about Ukraine, about Kiev, because we received a very interesting article made by Politico. Germany prepares record-breaking military package for Ukraine. Friedrich Merz's coalition has agreed to a sharp increase in support for Kiev in 2026. Aid to Ukraine will rise to 11.5 billion, the highest level of Germany military support since the beginning of the conflict. The decision was made during overnight budget negotiations that lasted until the early hours of the morning. Germany will allocate an additional 3 billion to strengthen the Ukrainian army. The article includes an extended quote for German sources confirming the package's contents. So this is a very important piece of news, because now we see that despite probably negotiations and talks between Russia and the United States of America, we see that the European Union is not going to give up. The European Union is going to allocate more funds in 2026 for Ukraine to fight with the Russian Federation, so which means that the conflict will continue. During the previous nights, the Russians carried out another massive attack with missiles across Ukraine. The sources are saying that 5 Kinzhal hypersonic missiles attacked the settlement of Starokonstantinov. So this is a very important settlement because Ukrainians use this airfield for their F-16s for air defense purposes. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation on the ground. And first let's talk about the Zaporozhye direction, which currently is something like a primary direction for the entire Russian army. During the previous 12 hours we had additional changes on the ground. First let's talk about the western Zaporozhye direction. As you can see, during the previous 24 hours the Russians managed to improve their position significantly. This information was confirmed by pro-Russian sources, and furthermore this information was confirmed by sources on the ground. Now, this is the exact picture in this area. So as you can see, the Russians, as a result of offensive operation, managed to establish complete control over the main supply lines for this Stepnogorsk citadel. So the Stepnogorsk citadel was caught in cauldron by the Russians, which means that in coming days the Ukrainians would be forced to fall back. During the previous days, the Ukrainians made lots of attempts with the purpose to counter-attack Russia's positions in this area, with the purpose to force them to fall back and to ruin the encirclement. So in this video we can see another special service group of the armored forces of Ukraine that were counter-attacking with the purpose to restore control over the main supply lines, but this group was destroyed by Russia's FPV drone operators. So this is the situation in this area, and the situation, as you can see, is very complicated for the armored forces of Ukraine. This video confirms that most likely coming days the citadel of Stepnogorsk would be captured by Russians completely and secured, and then Russians will be able to answer at the operational space of the Zaporozhye direction. Now let's talk about the eastern Zaporozhye flank. During the previous 12 hours we received lots of very interesting updates, so let's discuss them in details. First of all, the Ukrainian sources reported that an evacuation has been declared in Guliai-Polye. The city can be said goodbye to, according to Bezuglia. The city of Guliai-Polye, the birthplace of Nestor Makhno, has become the last victim of the military's unrest and Zelensky's desire to hold on to Syrsky. Say goodbye to the city in the Zaporozhye region. An evacuation has been declared there. It is being razed to the ground, outflanked, and soon the fighting will in the city of Guliai-Polye itself. So the Ukrainians announced evacuation, and we understand why. The Russians are getting closer and closer to this area from the east and the northeast. As for the eastern direction, during the previous 12 hours, pro-Ukrainian sources published this video. And in this video we can see how Ukrainians were attacking Russians that were trying to get the settlement from the east. There are lots of episodes in this 1 minute and 40 seconds video, and all of these episodes were geolocated exactly at this place between the settlements of Vysel and Zelený Gai. And this video confirms that the Russians managed to answer both settlements and currently there are very heavy clashes. And most likely Ukrainians will not be able to hold their positions, and they would be forced to fall back further in the western direction. Another important video came today from the settlement of Yablukova. This video was published probably a minute before I started making this video, so that is why we haven't adjusted the map. We added just icons to the map, so let's discuss them. This morning pro-Russian sources published a video where we can see how the fighting fightings were taking place for the settlement of Yablukova, and the village was captured by Russians. In this video we can see lots of episodes, and in the final part of the video we can see at least 2 episodes how Russians were raising their Russian flags in different parts of the settlement. The first flag was raised in the most western part, the second flag was raised in the most eastern part of the settlement. Based on this video and based most likely on the report of the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation that will be published today, we will adjust the map, we will color everything, we will color this gray zone, we will color this gray zone, and we will color the village of Yablukova itself. But at the same time, as you can see, the Russians still haven't confirmed that they managed to secure the settlement of Rovnopolye. But I would like to remind you that several days ago, pro-Ukrainian sources reported that they were forced to fall back from this area due to a very difficult situation on the ground. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Novopavlovka direction. So the situation here is very complicated. So this is the map by the end of the 14th of November of 2025, and we had the Novopavlovka as the Novopavlovka fortified area. So the entire settlement was colored with additional layer of yellow color, which means that this is a very powerful stronghold, and not just a very powerful stronghold, but a very important stronghold for the armed forces of Ukraine. But today we have removed this, let's say, additional layer because Russians managed to break through Ukrainian defense and to answer the settlement of Novopavlovka, and several pro-Russian sources reported that the Russians have already captured up to 60% of the settlement and they continue their offensive operation. Furthermore, we have this video where we can see how exactly the Russians were storming the settlement using FPV drones, using infantry and using infantry fighting vehicles. In this video we can see how Ukrainians were attacking Russian infantry fighting vehicles that were attacking the settlement of Novopavlovka under the cover of a fog. So the Russians, as you can see, are using fog almost every single day. They use this neutral barrier for their purposes, and telling the truth, the Russians won the late autumn military campaign basically due to fog. Ukrainians decided to invest lots of their resources to drones, and the problem is that drones cannot be used always. There are period of times when the drones are completely useless, and this is exactly the period of time when the Ukrainian drones are completely useless due to the fog. And the Russians during this fog period of time managed to improve their positions significantly across the entire line of combat contact, starting from the Zaporozhye direction and ending with the Kupinsk area. And this is another example of this. Russians answered the settlement, Russians landed infantry, Russians captured a lot of buildings, and we believe that in coming days the settlement of Novopavlovka would be completely captured by the armed forces of the Russian Federation. We just discussed the situation yesterday, and if you remember, I told you that this is not just the settlement of Novopavlovka, this is the beginning of the Pavlograd offensive operation. So the city of Pavlograd, this one is key city in the eastern part of Ukraine. The entire logistic of the entire Ukraine lays and relies on the settlement, because through this area a lot of railways go in the direction of the east and in the western direction, and the settlement of Novopavlovka means that the Russians will try to attack in this area, and the distance between the city of Pavlograd and the current positions of the armed forces of the Russian Federation is less than 70 kilometers. So I just would like to point your attention that when talking about 2025, the Russians of the group of forces East managed to let's say managed to around 70 kilometers from the city of Ugledar. So all these territories used to be under control of the armed forces of Ukraine, but Russians during the year captured all these territories. So the distance is 70 kilometers, which means that this is something that might happen. This is something that the Russians can achieve during the 2026, and with this Russians will block the city of Dnipro and the city of Zaporozhye from the eastern part of Ukraine. And as for the city of Zaporozhye itself, most likely Ukrainians, due to the river of Dnipro, would be forced to fall back to the western bank of the river because of complete absence of any possibilities to control the eastern bank. Anyway, this is not the topic of this video, but the situation is getting worse and worse. Now let's talk about the city of Pokrovsk. During the previous 12 hours, we received two videos from this area. This is the first one, and this is the southern citadel of the city of Mirnograd. Here we can see how Russians with FAB destroyed another building, basically erasing the citadel from the earth. So as a result of attack, another block of the building was completely reduced to ruins, of course, and the Russians are trying to destroy this micro-district before moving further in the northern direction. Furthermore, another important video was published by pro-Russian sources. Here we can see how Ukrainians managed to answer the northeastern part of the city of Pokrovsk. The sources are saying that this is a fresh video, this is not something archived or old, this is a fresh video, and here we can see how special forces of Ukraine managed to recapture the northeastern part of the city of Pokrovsk, probably with the purpose to maintain a corridor for evacuation. But when Russians managed to discover this group of the armored forces of Ukraine, they destroyed this building with Tornado S missile. So the building was completely destroyed. But despite the fact that the building was destroyed, of course, we were forced to adjust the map, and we colored this part of the northeastern part of the city of Pokrovsk and the complete control of the armed forces of Ukraine. Furthermore, the clashes continue in the area of the city by the name of Rodinska. The Ukrainians continue their counterattacks, but the Russians are also counterattacking. And today, several neutral mappers stated that Russians managed to improve their positions in the central part, trying to force the Ukrainians to fall back from this area. So, despite Ukraine attempts to unblock the contagion, despite Ukraine attempts to stabilize the situation, everything is coming to its logical end. But whether this is the end or not, and today Syrsky told us that this is not the end. Syrsky stated that Ukrainian armed forces have developed measures to counter Russia's plans to seize Pokrovsk and Mirnograd, says Ukraine Armed Forces Commander-in-Chief Syrsky, using man rats to calm the anxious population. According to Syrsky, he held a meeting with the commanders directly in the Pokrovsk-Mirnograd agglomeration. The enemy continues its attempts to break through the residential areas, apartment buildings, and consolidate their positions there to expand their zone of control. Taking this into account, we have developed a set of measures to counter the enemy's plans. That was stated by Syrsky. So, which means that in coming days, Ukraine may try counterattack in this area with the purpose probably to restore control over the city of Pokrovsk and maybe even the city of Mirnograd. So, this is going to be another meat grinder, obviously. Now let's move further and let's talk about the northern directions. During the previous 12 hours, we received additional changes on the ground around the settlement of Dvarechinska. So this is the map by the end of the 13th of November of 2025, and this is the moment when the Russians launched their major offensive operation, and every single day from that date we were adjusting the map under complete control of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. So now we have no doubts that in coming hours, and maybe in coming days, hours, the Russians will secure the village of Dvarechinska, and the Ukrainians would be forced to fall back towards the settlement of Kolodizne. So another settlement is about to be taken by Russians, and which means that Russians will enter the Veliki Burluk operational space, and they will continue advancing further from this direction in the direction of Veliki Burluk, and this is what we are going to face probably and see in the next months. And Russians are about to begin the Bely Kolodis offensive operation. So it's almost the same direction, but this time from the northwest in the southeast, and here from the southeast in the northwest. So the Kharkiv foothold between the Pechenegi water reserve and the border is the primary task and target for the group of forces north for upcoming 2026. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.